crowd here this morning, and there's a lot of questions, so it's great. My name is Donna Sugar, and I am the Regional District Director for Roberts Creek. And it's a real pleasure to be here and introducing the official community plan to the community. We're all here because we care about the future of Roberts Creek. And our official community plan provides us with the direction that we're going to take over the next 15 to 20 years. But really, the impacts of the decisions that we make will last for many decades. And I just want you to think for a minute that this building that we're in is almost 80 years old. And it's a decision that was made 80 years ago, and we're still enjoying it as a community hub today. So it's very important that you're here and can give us feedback on the official community plan. The current OCP that is a bylaw of the regional district now was made in 1994, and you might say, well, what do we need to do this again for? We've already done it, we've got a plan. But community plan should be dynamic, and the 1994 plan is in need of renewal. A lot of policies are kind of out of date, and there are some things that we consider to be important now that were less important in 1994 are not included in the plan. So a lot of stuff about agriculture, for example, there's a much higher profile for agriculture in the new plan than there was in 1994. We started this OCP renewal process about 3 years ago, and the first task was to create a volunteer citizens committee to work on the project. And the Regional District Board accepted everyone who volunteered to sit on that committee, and at the beginning there were 18 people, which is kind of a bulky number, but a few people did drop out as the process unfolded for health reasons or whatever, and we ended up with 12 amazing people who stuck it through to the end. So I'm just going to introduce a few of them. These folks spent thousands of hours. I think the calculation was something like 70,000 hours. Is that right? Okay, 3,000. They get like twice a month. No, twice. Yeah, every 2 weeks for 3 years. I mean, this is like a phenomenal contribution to the community. They were analyzing and discussing, and came up with the plan that's before you today. So we've got Ed Lands in the doorway over there, Caroline Glover, Norma Groh, Gerald Greenville, who else?
Elaine.
Oh, I'm sorry, Elaine Futterman, Mike Allegretti down there, David Mole, Maureen Drake, Scott Avery, and Diane Corbett was our recording secretary, who really did a great job of translating what's sometimes garbled discussion into something intelligible. And David Raphael was the planner that helped us do all this. And I want to make a special thank you to Mark LaBelle, who's part of the OCPC committee, who has provided us with a children's corner. Too bad we had no papers. One of our issues.
You don't have to be a child to go up there.
One of the issues we have is our aging demographics. So anyway, so the committee was formed, and they began, first of all, we had a big technical background report that brought all of the technical information about our demographics and our geotechnical information up to date, and the committee familiarized themselves with that. And then they held a visioning meeting in the hall in October of 2008, and about 80 people attended. Some of you may have been there. And the community was asked 3 questions. What do you love about Roberts Creek? What are the elements of a vibrant, healthy, and livable community? Picture Roberts Creek 15 to 20 years from now, and what does it look like? And those questions were answered by people in the community, and what the committee heard was that you want to keep Roberts Creek's rural character. That's really important. You value environmental protection and natural spaces. You're concerned about our environmental footprint. You want a vibrant and healthy, lively downtown core with lots of places for people to gather. You want Roberts Creek to be a welcoming and inclusive and diverse community with affordable housing for everybody. And you want the decisions that we make to be wise decisions so that going into the future, the next generations will also be able to enjoy a vibrant and healthy community. So the committee took all that information and created a vision and goals. There were, I think, about 6 goals in the 1994 plan. There's 17 in this new plan. And I think they're over here. And if you received a letter in the mail, they're on the back of the invitation that you received. And they took the vision and the goals, and they built a system of objectives and policies based on different topic areas that are all around the room here. Topics like agriculture, transportation, parks and trails, village core, resource management, that kind of thing. And these objectives and policies translate the vision into reality. So they tried really hard to be true to the values that were expressed back in October 2008. And now it's your turn to tell us how successful they were. Does this plan meet your needs and reflect the values that are important to you? Does this plan meet the needs of future generations so that in another 80 years, our great-grandchildren will stand in the Roberts Creek Hall and thank you for your vision? So that's what we've got before us, and I'll turn it over to David Raphael, who will give you a little bit more detail, and then we'll open it up for questions from you.
Hi. I'll briefly touch on what's going to happen after today, the work that we're going to be doing, and as we move forward, hopefully, to adoption of the bylaw, of the community plan, and then highlight some of the main changes that we've done compared to the current OCP, and then we'll open the floor up for questions and discussion. And that's the main reason we're here, is to listen to what you have to say, to take notes and see whether we need to make adjustments to the draft plan right now. So the official community plan is received first reading. It's a bylaw of the regional district and will be adopted as such. So it's a very important document. It's a legal document. It's used to judge development applications. It is a document that the local government, the regional district, needs to pay attention to when we're doing any activity that relates to land. So our other strategies and actions need to be in concordance with the plan itself. So that's a key aspect of it. So our zoning bylaw flows out of the community plan, and that lets you know and people know what kind of development can take place on properties. The next steps after today is we'll probably run a 4 to 6 week consultation period, getting feedback from yourselves and other members of the community, and from agencies that we would consult with, so the provincial agencies and other local governments on the coast. And we'll look and see what kind of comments we get to see whether we need to make any adjustments to the plan, and reconstitute the working group to go through those and make some recommendations about some changes, and take that to the planning committee to see whether we should have enough to do a second reading, amend the plan, and then schedule a public hearing. We're hoping to do that towards the end of late spring, hold a public hearing, or early summer. We won't go for a public hearing late summer because a lot of people are away, so if we miss that date, early on, we'd be looking for a public hearing. And some of the key changes we've done, as mentioned, we've really enhanced the agricultural section. There's been a growing awareness on the coast from the residents and from the local governments about the need for food security, and we feel that the plan needed to be enhanced. So some of the things we've done is, in the current community plan, agricultural land reserve has different designations in terms of the quality of the land, and that led to recommendations of whether land could be excluded from the agricultural land reserve. We've taken the view that all agricultural land reserve is of equal value for the purposes of food production, that there is no need to separate it out. And we are looking at protecting the land, not supporting exclusions, not supporting subdivisions unless we feel it would end up with a better layout of land that would enhance agricultural production. So that's one key aspect. The other thing we're looking at is identifying an area around the village core, so around Lower Road, Roberts Creek, where the shops are right now, to see whether we can have a slightly higher density development to trade on the fact that people will be able to walk to the village core, to walk to services and shops, to enhance the commercial offer, maybe look at expanding some more commercial development at a modest scale. So there's some policies around that. And the trade-off for increased density would be things like maybe increasing the amount of park space we have, or trails, providing some affordable housing or some special needs housing, such as seniors housing. Another aspect we're looking at is one site-specific project that we want to see developed is what happens to the land that's in behind the Roberts Creek Hall. There's two portions to it. There's a bit immediately behind us and a bit off to the side. It's owned by the regional district, and we see that there's some potential there. So we have some questions around that. And some of the ideas that have come forward is maybe using the land behind the hall to support the hall in terms of additional park space or maybe some space to assist with the farmer's market that takes place out front, and maybe provide a little bit more additional parking on the little road right of way. And then possibly do a modest development on the other portion to provide some affordable housing. So we want to get some feedback around that. And before we realize that, we'd still want to do a more detailed public consultation exercise that would actually lay out the specifics around that. We just want to get a feel whether we're moving in the right direction. We're not looking to make any really significant changes to Roberts Creek. It's a great community. People have said they want to maintain the way it is, maintain its rural feel. So we're not opening up development above the highway right now. We don't see the need for that. We see there's still plenty of opportunity for infill development where people could build a second house on their property or build a first house on some vacant property to meet current needs. The higher level of development we see as being located in areas like Seashell or Gibson's, where there is still plenty of land for development and more aggressive development agenda that makes sense, given that they're the areas with higher services, with septic treatment systems in place, so they can handle that. We're still dependent on sewage treatment being on a site-by-site basis. So to allow for the maybe greater density in the village core area, we would be looking at a liquid waste management plan, so we can try to identify what the pitfalls may be and where we can provide some kind of community sewage systems, if that's appropriate. So that's another aspect of work that still needs to be done. We are looking for the commercial development to still be very modest, home-based businesses primarily, or bed and breakfast accommodation to be the main focus for the modest employment and economic activity outside of the core area. However, there's potential for maybe some modest industrial area to be developed around, or uses to be developed around the landfill. We've expanded the boundary for the community plan to take in the landfill at Dusty Road and along the northern area.
Is that this right here?
Yep. That's a little
This is the new plan area that takes in a whole bunch of new land that wasn't in the plan before.
Most of the land up there is either crown or private managed forest land or privately held, but we don't see the need for developing it right now. That might be something for the next OCP that will be on that. So that's all I really have to say right now. I want to open the floor for your comments. We had a good lively discussion before, and turn it over to you. If you can, there's a microphone in the back, I'll just switch it on. If you could just say your name and roughly where you live, and we'll record that. And there's comment sheets at the back, the comments on the sheets are individual tables. My business card is back there if you want to get hold of me after this meeting. It's a big document. We don't expect you to digest it all today. You'll have plenty of opportunity over the next few weeks to come back with comments after you had a chance to think about it a bit more. So I'll just turn that mic on.
So use my hair, please. Tell us who you are.
Eric Keith, and I live in the Charlotte Park area. And one question that struck me is that the way the plan is structured, there doesn't seem to be a separate discussion of residential development. Now, I realize that when you look at all the policies under other headings, you know, a lot of things are covered, but what was the committee's thinking of that?
There is a section on sort of residential and country residential and rural areas. We've been pretty much kept with the same policy set that we've had in the current OCP, but with some additional directions in there, such as we may consider higher density development where it delivers affordable or special needs housing. So that's the main change that we're looking at in that area. Other than that, we think there's not a lot of need for change in the residential.
You know, just from an information point of view, it would be helpful if there was something that looked at you know, the distribution of different densities and
I think that's available in the mapping structure, is it not?
Yeah. We have identified areas where we have given different residential characteristics based on the soil characteristics of the area that links back to the ability to subdivide and manage sewage treatment, and also where we think traditionally higher, smaller lots can be achieved. So we do have a residential A, B, and C, I believe, and D characters, and each one of those have a different parcel size allotment to that. So that's the sort of density, and you'll see the higher density tends to be sort of closer to the ocean, and then below the highway.
Thank you.
Anything else?
So just a question, is the Mount Elphinstone proposed mark, Mount Elphinstone Park, is it in these boundaries or not?
Yes. We had quite a bit of conversation about that this morning. The 1,500 hectare park is identified as an aspiration in this plan, and it is within the OCP boundaries. Thank you.
Charlene Kenner. I live on Conrad Road in Roberts Creek, and I've just got maybe a question or maybe a comment about the transportation. It says here that you're planning for an adequate road system that complements and supports the existing rural wooded character of Roberts Creek. I think that the rural character of Roberts Creek has been complemented to the extreme. Right now what we have is a highway where the traffic, all of the traffic from the whole Sunshine Coast has to pass through our Roberts Creek area. And there hasn't been any kinds of improvements made on that highway in many years. We still have a really high rate of fatalities. We've even had another one since November. So I might be suggesting that we need to leave some of the rural and wooded area behind to improve the highway and Lower Road to actually be able to safely contain the traffic that's traveling there. And there's lots of support in this for other types of transportation besides cars, but the reality is that we are keeping the cars. You can't even get into Roberts Creek and out of it without using your car. So we have to, we have to get the highways and the roadways to be safe for the people in Roberts Creek, and then we might have to give up some of our Roberts Creek, character for that, because in the end, I think safety's, it supersedes a nice looking rural road.
Just got a really specific question, and I bore a lot of
Can you
people.
use the mic? 'Cause I think
Oh, okay.
that would be-
Yeah, I've just got a really specific question about a piece of land I've been interested in for years, and that's, I can see it on the map from here, just east of Cliff Crookle Park, there's a purple triangle. That one right there, yeah, I see it now, it's got a color and is designated present or future recreation use, I think, but last time I looked into it, I thought that I found out that it's just a piece of Crown Forest land. And as far as the province is concerned, it's going to be logged just like everything else, but I'm just curious about what is the status of that land? Is that a hoped for status and the province doesn't know about it yet, or what's the situation?
I didn't know that it's not near it.
No. I think this is a long-standing area that we've seen as a potential to expand the Cliff Gilger or the park offer, and it's something we would have to work with the province on.
Okay.
And we'll see whether they're amenable to that. That's sort of the aspiration right now.
Yeah, I was hoping something had already happened along
As far as I'm aware, we haven't been able to achieve anything on that.
Okay.
And the community plan does have aspirational policies as well, and guidance policies and specific action policies. So it's a bit of a mix of things in there. So this one I think is more aspirational.
Hi, my name is Jack Rousseau. Is there anything within the OCP that further protects from clear-cut logging on private land? Is there anything like that? I'm specifically thinking about parcel at the end of Day Road that's owned by Arm Timber, because I hike a lot around and they all being slated to be cut, and there's a lot of people living around there. And the same with the Crown Land too. Is there anything within the OCP that helps further protect this? He's from clear-cut logging.
No, we can't. We don't have the authority to do that. We did have some conversation about private managed forest land and Crown land this morning, and then during the break, I discovered that somebody from Island Timberlands was here because they are a property owner in Roberts Creek and got the notification. So that's interesting. So we've got private managed forest land, which is the Day Road property, owned privately by a forest company. And they have private managed forest land status. So they have their logging rights protected, and they have certain controls that we cannot interfere with their ability to log. And Crown land, we can't interfere with the ability, the province manages and regulates everything that happens. So we do not have any authority to restrict, control, clear-cut logging.
Change the zoning or anything like that?
The zoning doesn't apply.
You can't do
The
that.
zoning does not apply, and currently the zoning is, the committee felt strongly that the working forest land should remain working forest. And so there are restrictions on home building, for example, on those lands, restrictions on subdivision so that they can't be divided up and sold off as individual small pieces of real estate. But we do not have the authority to regulate or control the activity of forestry companies on Crown land or private managed forest land. It's simply fact, it's a provincial thing.
Thank you.
Eric?
All right, you have your chance.
I
Hans Tenner, Conrad Road, Roberts Creek. Yes, I agree, Donna, that the regional district doesn't have direct authority over the provincial transportation and the parks and Crown land. But I firmly believe that the regional district government and elected directors and staff represent us even on those issues that come from the province. They are our advocates in a sense. So I think what one has to be careful about always pulling back and saying, well, we don't have direct authority. Well, you can still speak on behalf of the Roberts Creek residents.
Yeah, we do that, but it's not something that can be regulated by a community plan. So the bylaw of a community plan or the zoning bylaw doesn't do it. We can talk to them, we can lobby them, and we can put overarching goals and ideas into the plan that say this is the type of direction that we want for our community, and I believe the plan contains that kind of language. But in terms of actually having direct control through that bylaw, it is not something that we can do. So those kinds of policies and objectives and controls do not exist in the plan. The aspirations do, but the controls don't.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's important to, just like anything, you're not going to get it unless you ask for it. And the regional district needs to be more persistent in communicating with BC Timber Sales and the Ministry of Transportation when basically they're not doing their job. Like the Ministry of Transportation, they're not doing their job, even in highway maintenance.
Hans, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think that we're here to talk about the OCP and what's in the OCP accomplish, and we need to stick to that.
Yeah, and I'm sticking to that. Because, like what's called aspirational, I don't know, I'm excited about that word, but I think goals is a better word. And, protecting intact forest should be stated as a goal. The 1,500 hectares, there needs to be a bit of housekeeping in the plan to make that more internally consistent. Because you're also communicating with the provincial politicians. We have an elected MLA here who directly represents us too. And the fact is that the government agencies, they respond to the politicians in Victoria. So BC Timber Sales can easily change their mind if they get direction from the provincial government, politicians. And that's where the regional district representatives come in. So I'm saying that wherever possible, the language needs to be quite strong and also kind of with an expectation that it's going to be listened to, particularly on transportation and parks. The highway is a disaster. I think it's one of the worst highways in the province, and that's speaking a bit from my own highways background. Continuous accidents on there. I know people are they're being deterred from using that highway as a transportation route for anything other than cars. Who wants to ride a bicycle on there with no shoulders, trucks, and everything else coming around blind curves? And that's a fact. I think not nearly enough is being done to put pressure on the provincial government to improve that, to bring it up to standard from 50 years ago. That's what we're talking about. They're spending $4 billion on the Newport Man Bridge, but here we can't get a few $1 million to improve the highway for safety reasons. But anyway, okay, that's. I think that, transportation and parks need a big emphasis.
Thank you. Eric?
Well, I have a question from a much smaller scale. Again, going back to the tree clearing issue, but I seem to recall that in the old OCP there was a guideline that we're going to preserve tree cover on Lower Road and no clearing of trees along the road when development takes place. Obviously, there are cases where that clearing has taken place. I can't remember whether that guideline was just a hope and a wish or actually a development permit area guideline.
It's a guideline, it's not a development permit area along the highway corridor.
Okay, and is there any provision in the new OCP that has some teeth in it on that issue?
I'm trying to recall, I think we do have comments around that roads should be designed so they're rural in nature, rural in character. Whether that encompasses the comment, the previous policy, I'm not sure, I'd have to have a look at it. What I'd suggest is if you can make that comment on one of the comment sheets, so we can track that one and go back and have a look at it.
Yeah, I'd hate to create a development permit area along the highway just for that purpose, but it does seem it's something that needs to have some teeth. So
There's certainly been a lot of discussion in the community about, should we have development permit areas to stop tree cutting. We've also had comments, received comments from people saying we should be clearing sites because of it enhances safety from fire. So we've got to find that balance in between. So I think definitely there is a desire to keep the highway and the Lower Road rural, to not have them clear cut. And I think I'll check to see if we maintain that comment, that policy directly, or if it's sort of hidden away in interpretation.
yeah, and to follow up on that,
Yeah.
when you're reviewing applications at the staff level, obviously you must look at the development permit area guidelines, but do you in fact look at the other, these more general guidelines and comment on those too?
If there's a rezoning or official community plan amendment, we have a little bit more flexibility in what we can look at. We can be have more control and respect the desires of the community. So we do look at a wider range of issues than if someone's just coming to develop their property based on what they're currently allowed to do. So we would take input from the community to see whether there's anything we need to take special care of. Certainly we've defined areas where we want to maintain tree cover. Generally that's been around streams, that's where we look to protect it, protect the ecology, because there are guidance and development permit areas around the streams and sensitive, geotechnically sensitive areas. I'm not aware that we've ever imposed a condition, a legal agreement that says you can't cut trees along the side of a road. But again, if you think that's something we should look at.
But I think that issue was expressed, in the old OCP as a whole, probably.
I'll make a note of it. Please also make that comment as well, so I don't miss something.
Oh, hi, I'm Jerry Hills, and I live on Crow Road in Roberts Creek. And in July of 2010, the people in our neighborhood received a letter from a logging company saying that within a week they were going to start logging. And because we were licensed that we had water licenses that we paid every year to the provincial government, that they had to tell us they were going to be lobbied about us. We had 1 week, and this was our water, and I think that most people don't know that above the highway in Roberts Creek, there are 500 properties that have no municipal water, that we have direct lines to a creek to supply our homes, or that we're on wells. And my major concern when I read about watershed protection is, I pay the BC government every year for my water license, but they are under no obligation to protect my water source. So with a whole lot of help and getting together some great people, I was able to save myself and 4 other people's water directly to our homes, because either the logging company or BC Timber Sales had to supply 2 $20,000 bridges across my very, very delicate creeks that feed into Malcolm Creek. Now, I couldn't believe that we only had 1 week's notice, and I don't know how this official community plan can protect people in the future. This is really our water, this is it. And that's my story. Anyone have any ideas? Come on.
That's a tricky one, because as noted, there are different jurisdictional levels, and the province can do a lot of things which we don't have direct control. We don't have control over it. We're reduced to lobbying, cajoling, working with. We have identified the need for well and watershed protection for the people above the highway. There needs to be some studies carried out at some point, depending on finding the funding for that. But this is something we're aware of. And that's one of the reasons why we don't see the need for development up above the highway right now in terms of physical, construction. If that happens, it's going to impact people's water supplies. However, there are this sort of the logging interests, the mining interests that do override it. One of the ideas around identifying Mount Elphinstone Park, the 1,500 hectare area, would help to secure protection of watersheds, drinking water sources. And we'd have to work with the province and First Nations to actually realize that. So again, we're sort of back in the realms of aspirational desires.
Yes, I think
and
it should be
expressing
a
those in
priority.
It certainly is our
I
priority,
think
and I'm
if
sure
you can't have water to your house,
Yeah,
you have no house.
yes.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Allison Davies from Henderson Road. I'm really interested in the protection of the beach area and the foreshore. And I know that there was a lot of work done on trying to protect the biodiversity of a greater area, to protect it from development from the waterfront properties. I'm just not sure where we are with that, what kind of agreements there are, and if they have any teeth. And I'm also, the foreshore map there, Donna, shows sort of proposed recreation area, and I'm just wondering what that's about, so.
I think Dave's going to have to tell you about the latter part, but the, what else is referring to is the shoreline bylaws that were drafted a number of years ago, and it was a big challenge to balance the environmental needs versus the private property rights of waterfront property owners, and there was a very vigorous and sometimes heated debate about that. And so,
debate goes on.
Ghosts of debates past. So what ended up happening was a citizens committee of 11 people was put together. They were 6 from the waterfront, 5 from non-waterfront property owners, and included a number of experts who happened to reside in the community. We had an architect, we had a marine engineer, we had a geologist, and these biology experts. These were all people who volunteered to be on the committee and would happen to have those bits of expertise. And so they came up with a very sort of scaled down version of what the CRD had originally proposed, which was quite prescriptive initially. And so the shoreline regulations are in the community plan. They were put in the community plan. They were included by an amendment to the plan for the 1994 plan, and they've been carried forward in the new plan as written. So if you want to have a look at those, they're included in the development permit area section, and I think that section's towards that corner of the room. But look up the development permit areas, and they're all listed, and all of those shoreline regulations are included in there. I agree they aren't as strong as they could be. They were what we were able to achieve at the time. So if you have comments about it, we'd love to hear them and have a look. They aren't terribly prescriptive. They do allow for people to rebuild on existing footprints, that kind of thing. But they do make some pretty good recommendations about softer approaches to protecting your waterfront property, so that we would move away from these terrible vertical concrete walls. Which is not to say that they won't continue to be built, because if you get a qualified professional to sign it off and say, this is the only thing that could be built in this area, and it will protect this property, and it won't damage for X, Y, Z reason, it might actually proceed. So, but have a look at, and if you have comments about how you think it could be improved, we would really appreciate that feedback.
And with regard to the idea of the shoreline area below the tide level to be a par for public space, this sort of pink area down there, that's a long-standing ambition of the community expressed through the official community plan to note that area should be open to the public. It shouldn't become industrialized or broken up by too many, or well, there's no docks right now, but by sort of alienating the land, alienating the water by having docks put in and leases issued by the province. Current zoning does allow for modest docks for residential use or for buoys for mooring. We're looking at maybe just supporting buoys for mooring rather than docks in the new community plan. And part of the discussion has been how do we protect the important resources such as eelgrass that are so important to encouraging maintaining the fish stocks to create the locations for feed fish that then feed on to salmon and other important species. So there's a desire to keep that as sort of a public area, as a lightly touched area.
Something else that just occurred to me about the importance of something like that. I'm not sure if it's the provincial government or the federal government, but they're working to develop aquaculture mapping planning areas. And this is a new initiative, it's just starting. And if we have stuff in our OCP that says that this is a future public recreation zone, it would provide us with some teeth to resist the development of aquaculture projects off our shoreline, which I would guess would not be popular. Betty?
Betty Baxter, I live on Rocky Road, North Street. I just wonder if you could say a few words about the expanded boundaries. I get it that it's a huge expansion to the official community plan area, and I haven't heard pros or cons about that. I understand the vast majority of it is Crown and privately owned working forest land, and I'm thinking, yes, the notion that that can't be sold for real estate helps our community, and that it may enhance our pressure for an enlarged park, but can you give us a few sentences about what the discussion was in terms of making it that particular boundary? Is there some rationale? And also, were there any negatives about having such an enlarged area.
If you notice at the top, can people see this map? You might not be able to see it very well, but at the very top of the new plan area, there's some light blue. That's privately owned land, and the idea was to include that. It wasn't included in the current OCP. That is the land that you may have heard as the CNI lands. It is no longer owned by Columbia National Investments. They went bankrupt and it's reverted to the previous owner, AJB. I don't know what AJB stands for. But it is, some of it is private managed forest land. The two properties that are that are included in the Chapman Creek watershed have been taken out of PMFL. So if private land is in private managed forest land, our zoning doesn't really come into play except for our subdivision zone. It can't be subdivided differently from what we allow. But if it comes out of PMFL, our zoning applies. And we have a lot greater degree of control over what they do than we did if we didn't have them included in our plan. So the desire was, on the part of the committee, was to have a greater say through the community plan over all this land, and should the Crown decide to sell some, what would we have in place that would kick in immediately to address controlling that? So for example, there's some property here which is Crown land, and if you look closely you'll see it's already subdivided. It's in all these little, I don't know if they're 5s or 10s, but they're in the 5 and 10 acre size, and there's one brown one because it is privately owned. Those were created to provide veterans with land after the war. And I'm not sure if it was the first or the second, but anyway, a lot of those lands reverted back to the Crown through non-payment of taxes because the veterans didn't really want them. And so they're Crown land, but the Crown could say, gee, we see a revenue source here, we're going to sell them. And it's important that we have some zoning and commentary in place should that happen, so that the kinds of things that this community supports be allowed to happen on those lands and not something else, or not be left in limbo saying, oh my goodness, it was Crown land, we didn't say anything about it, but now we need to say something, but it's too late because this person's already bought it and done something. So that was the reasoning behind it. I haven't heard that there is a downside to that. Doesn't require us to do anything to spend money or Eric?
Just to follow up on the earlier discussion of the shoreline, you know, if you're proposing public use of that area, it's also important to have pedestrian access. And I think a lot of the unopened road allowances are important for that. In a few cases, private owners have sort of landscaped that area into their property, which sort of cuts off public access. And in other cases, you know, there are very rough trails that are not that comfortable for walking. Does the OCP deal with that issue?
I think the OCP suggests that we want to see them developed. There is a sort of practical financial issue, and there was a plan drawn up in, I think it was 2007, with community consultation about where to put a priority list of trails and beach accesses, and they're sort of being done as money allows. If there is one that you have a particular interest in, make a note at the table for parks and trails. And there was also some discussion this morning about if a waterfront property subdivides, what kind of requirements could be put in place to ensure that an additional beach access is provided. So that came up this morning, and I think that those comments were noted.
You can't have too many.
Well, they cost money to maintain, and so we do have to be mindful of our capacity as taxpayers to hire the staff and pay for that maintenance program.
Hi, I'm Mark Lavelle, and I live about 200 meters down the road. I just wanted to kind of follow up on the comments made about highway safety earlier. And so please don't get me wrong, we can't live on the Sunshine Coast and not be tuned in to the issue of highway safety, and by no means, I mean, I bang my head against the wall of the Ministry of Transportation. They have my email address down there. But I just want to take issue with the point that the car is the only way to access Roberts Creek. Part of what makes Roberts Creek relatively affordable for my relatively young family is that my wife and I can take the bus and bike to work. I mean, you raised the issue of a 20 or 80-year or 80-year horizon, perhaps, right? And I think, 80 years from now, who knows where? Well, I would probably guess where fossil fuels are going to be at. And somewhere in those 80 years, I imagine I won't be able to drive a car, and I'll be in an electric scooter. So for I think 80 years from now, they're going to be thanking us in terms of providing alternatives to cars. And what's nice is often it doesn't come from the same pot of money, right? You've got transportation infrastructure money that comes from the province, and then you've got whether it's gas tax money or other things. That both are achievable, I believe, but I hate to see one suffer at the cost of another. So I just want to speak in favor of the strong stance for transportation alternatives taken by the new plan. Yeah, that's about it.
Anybody else? Maybe somebody who has not spoken? I see a few other people wanting to get up to the mic hand, so I'd like to give them a chance.
Yes,
And then
actually, I didn't want to ask a question, just make a comment about the transportation because it was directly addressed to what we had said before. The important fact to keep in mind about the highway, and that's the main transportation issue in Roberts Creek, is that it's an arterial highway with, I would say, 95% of the traffic in there is the traffic that's coming to or from Roberts Creek. It has the origin and destination outside of Roberts Creek. It goes right through from one end to the other. So that's an important point. If it's not mentioned in there, I think it should be mentioned in the OCP because that's factors from completely outside. That is going to continue.
Thank you. So Judith and Anna.
Thank you. My name is Judith Reeve. I live on Emery Road in Roberts Creek. And first of all, I would like to acknowledge the tremendous amount of work that appears to have gone into this plan, and to express appreciation to all the hours that people have put into it. But I would like to say that I've been in the land use planning business since the 1970s. And in Oregon, in the 1970s, we developed plans very much like this. And so what I'm seeing is a plan with many motherhood statements, a plan which is not much different than those plans which were developed 30, even 40 years ago. And I'm concerned when I read it about a couple of things. And one of them has to do with the creativity of what's in here. So I just opened it up and I saw bicycle trails. And it was an intention that there be bicycle trails painted down the side of the road, which was great. But there are other ways of doing things. And while there's a limited space on a highway right-of-way, there is the possibility of saying to the people who live along there, hey, we could reduce your taxes by a very small percentage if you gave us a little bit of road for us to develop a bicycle trail. If you allowed us to have a bicycle trail and a bit of a buffer zone before we get to the road. So I don't know how practical that is, but I do know that it's been done everywhere. And when I work in China, I see the bicycle trails that were developed there 30 years ago, and they're separate from the vehicular trails. And so I think that the other thing that really concerns me is that there doesn't seem to be any kind of economic reality. It's very much a plan of protection. It's very much a plan of conserving what we have. But as we all know, in order to develop and develop creatively and conserve at the same time that you develop, you have to break eggs to make an omelette. And I'm very concerned about the fact that there's not much of an opportunity here to do anything except increase taxes to create revenue in Roberts Creek. So that's really my statement. And my question now is, could you talk a little bit about the things that are wonderfully creative about this plan and which differ from the kind of planning that did go on 30 and 40 years ago?
I'm not sure I can answer exactly that way, but I'll tell you a little bit about some of the changes that are different from the 1994 plan. There was quite a lot of discussion at the committee about smart growth, and the committee deliberately didn't include that term in the plan because they felt it was a bit of a buzzword and might become confusing to people. What does it mean? But it was the premise that we want to infill our development where services exist and not sprawl up the mountainside and create smaller and smaller lots moving further and further away from services. So there were some concentric zones kind of put into the plan. So the commercial area that we have now is very tiny, and there is a proposal in the plan to allow the expansion of that commercial zone, a modest amount. So moving outwards from the existing commercial area and allow property owners going up Roberts Creek Road as far as Timberland, and on the upper side of Beach as far as Timberland, which comes out as a little trail, and on the upper side of Lower as far as Largo, to apply to rezone their properties as commercial, and that it's accepted within the plan, but it would still have to go through a rezoning process. So there's a modest expansion of the commercial core made possible. Then there is what the committee called expanded home-based business. So moving up from that expanded commercial area as far as Cedar Grove Road on Roberts Creek Road, to allow home-based business owners to, and home-based business is allowed everywhere in Roberts Creek, but to allow the people in that zone to have more than one external employee, and to have a bit of a more expanded home-based business opportunity. And the B&B opportunity is expanded as far as the hall on Roberts Creek Road to allow, I think it's an extra bedroom. There currently B&Bs are allowed 2 bedrooms, and this new zone would allow 3. So there's a little bit of expansion of commercial opportunity in the downtown area. There's also a sort of a density increase opportunity in the area around that downtown core from Blackburn to Marlene, which was seen by the committee as within walking distance of the downtown. So some density infill would be permitted if a person applied and provided some amenities back to the community, and it would be done on a case-by-case basis, so there could be some more density there. This morning there was a discussion about home-based business and opportunities outside of the downtown core, and so we talked a little bit about this new proposal, which is included in the plan for temporary use permits. And a temporary use permit would be, somebody would be able to apply to do something that it doesn't currently fit within the zoning, but would be only allowed for 3 years, renewable for another 3 years, and 3 years after that, but subject to a review process. But in order to have temporary use permitted, it has to be in your zoning bylaw, and it currently is not. But the Roberts Creek OCP, the new one, suggests that we do that so that somebody could try something on for size and allow the community to see what it's like and is it viable, and then they could actually apply for rezoning and allow that to happen on a spot basis. So I don't know, Judith, if that answers your question, but that's what's currently in the plan that the committee developed. If you have other ideas, we really want to hear them. So, you know, that's something that they were aware of. Well, the other one is this is the landfill up here. The landfill is actually not the Seashell landfill, it's the Roberts Creek landfill. And the new OCP suggests that there could be some industrial development in that area because it is far away from residential and already has an industrial characteristic with the landfill being up there. So the plan does allow for consideration of that. So I hope that answers your question.
I'm Auntie McCauley. I live down on Stevens Road, and I own a business in Heart of the Creek Corridor. My concern is I see a little bit of a conflict here that there's a very strong sort of wanting to stay with the old, which I've heard other people talking about, and a bit of a fear of economic development because it's always accentuated that everything's modest in terms of economic development. But what I see is that there's a real reliance on fossil fuel in order to maintain this rural area, which is beautiful, and I love it. We have to drive, and like I walk to work all the time, and I feel like I'm taking my life into my hands walking down the road because people go roaring past me and there's hardly any room to walk. So I don't feel safe walking to work, but I do it anyway. And then looking into the future, I think, okay, if fossil fuels go up, as I hear, you know, economic forecasts, what's it going to look like for us if gas goes up to an exorbitant rate and we're still dependent on our cars and we don't have enough of an economic core in Roberts Creek? And also, I don't know about anyone else, but my kids have all left here because there's nothing for them here. And I would like to see protection of the environment, but that also includes not using my car so much. So I'd really like to see more economic development in a reasonable area, and also like greater density of houses. And just from my own personal experience, I haven't felt supported in doing that on the property I co-own. And it's an acre, and it's within that core around the heart of the creek. We haven't been supported to even take it down to a half an acre, which is very huge, actually, when you consider that I'm in walking distance of a business area. You know, I just feel that, yes, we do need to protect the environment, but I personally think it's important to change the paradigm away from this suburbia thinking where, yeah, it looks rural, but we're all dependent on cars and maybe even being independently wealthy or retired or having some other means of supporting ourselves besides having a job, you know, that's accessible by maybe walking or biking or bus. And I realize that, you know, this plan is starting to talk about it, but there seems to be a real hesitancy in looking towards alternatives to lifestyle. Because in 80 years, I don't think people are going to be driving. I don't think people are going to be, I mean, if gas shoots up high enough, will I be able to afford to drive to Gifts or Seashell to get my groceries? You know, maybe I want to go buy my groceries in the heart of the creek. Anyway, that's my point. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. I think what we'd like to hear is your response to this sort of increase, these changes that I mentioned previously in response to Judith. If you have comments about that, because it is in line with what you're saying. If you think it doesn't go far enough, that would be good to hear.
Yeah, I have to say these questions were really good because I read the old OCP, the draft and everything, and that was one of the things that came out of it to me was that it wasn't really progressive. It was like it wasn't telling where my kids are going to work, how they're going to build, you know, things around here, what's going to work. One of my comments with this is, if I remember well from reading the OCP, the draft, as you're trying to shy away from developing on the highway, commercial space on the highway. Could you explain to me what is the thinking behind that?
I have to get a committee member up here to do that. This was very controversial in the 1994 plan, and continued with this particular committee. So I see hands going up. Maybe somebody from the committee would
I
like to
think
speak.
the original idea was that you drive through Roberts Creek and don't know you were here.
So that's what you want to keep?
No, I'm actually one of the ones who wanted to see a lot more highway access, because to me it would bring the speed down to 60K.
I'm totally
I
there.
think that the idea was to avoid the Upper Gibson's look of the community. So I think that, and Mike, maybe you have a comment on that.
I think the real big thing is we just didn't want kind of the channelization along the highway, kind of a continuation from, you know, Gibson's to Seashell, and that's the one thing that separates us apart is having the highway, not having this kind of linear kind of thing where you're going to have all these little tiny strip malls, whatever, you know, and that's the whole effect that Roberts Creek wanted to get away from. And that the actual people of Roberts Creek said the number one thing they wanted to protect was the highway corridor. So that value was expressed tremendously, I guess, strongly at our visioning thing that started off this whole batch of doing the OCP.
But isn't the idea though, is if you restrict development on the highway, you basically have people going to drive right through, and they're going to drive really fast. Because this is what's going on right now, yes. Right? They got nowhere to stop, they got nothing to stop for. And B, you know, if you try to push people to come down to the downtown core here, with the downtown core, excuse me, the village core, you know, first thing you notice is there's no place for cars here. Like, this is the worst, like, you know, as far as like the junction down there's no place to park in the summertime. It's a total mess. So why are we directing people down there, letting them slide through all the way to Seashell, wherever they want to go, not stopping anywhere on the highway? And the strip mall is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, you know, there's tons of properties up there that are sitting on the highway that are not really livable because they're so noisy. And people could turn these things into little shops, little inns, little restaurants, you know, and that's progress, and that's work for the people who come and live here, and it's walkable, right? So, I mean, if you're going to plan, why do you want to send everybody down here when there's actually no place? I mean, if you're going to do that, use that land behind here to make a big parking lot and make it a pedestrian village. If you really want to do that, that's what they did in Whistler. I mean, much bigger scale, but it worked. People walk to the village.
I hope people are aware that they can park at the school when it's weekends and outside of school time. There's a great paved parking area up behind the school.
But back to the highway.
I just want to say, I live on the highway, and we love the noise. That's one of the attractions for us, to feel attached, to be attached to the world. We both come from major cities, and the idea of living in we enjoy that aspect, actually. And we employ 5 people who are well paid on the highway. I think there's a lot of businesses all through Roberts Creek that are invisible. I look at my neighbors. One runs a large electrical company.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
I'm your neighbor.
Oh, are you my neighbor? So I think there is a lot of income through, you know, all through Roberts Creek that we don't see. And I love the ones I see when I discover them. Guys like Sharky's now actually tells us they're there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's.
I mean, there's even there's even like a car shops off the highway. They're already there. I mean, you drive the highway, they're already there. So why don't we allow, like, you know?
We do allow it. It's there.
We don't allow car repairs.
Not anymore.
But why don't we allow, like, you know, more commercial development? That's what I'm saying. And a case in point is that property with the surfboard in front of it. I don't even know exactly. And I heard some kind of stories about everything and everything. But the thing is that right now, it's not pretty. And, you know, a nice little inn there would be nice. No, I heard that story, but that's not I mean, the point is, though, that, you know, we're looking at this as like, oh, we don't want to change anything. But if you don't change anything, I mean, there is no real job for young people in this town. There isn't, you know. And I mean, and it's nice to say, well, they can go to Gibson and work, because Gibson, they can do whatever they want. They can build whatever many houses they want there, not here. But that's kind of like throwing everything into your neighbor's backyard.
and not really taking grasp of what is it that we want to be in 80 years.
Okay, so I hope that you write your comments down for us, because we need to hear them, and it'd be helpful to have them on paper.
So on that point, one quick question, then how do we get them to you guys?
David's card is at the front, at the door.
We just send an email to David?
Yeah, you could send me an email, you could drop it off in the box at the back, you could mail it to me, come down to Field Road or up to Field Road and leave it there. If you want to meet me specifically, it's probably worth calling ahead.
I will
so I have a bit of a warning.
Back at the beginning of all this, and throughout the process, we did talk about the idea of having a small sort of little commercial hub down Bing Roadway or Conrad Roadway, another one perhaps up Hell Nevison, as well as the downtown core. And those sort of filtered out with regards to having to then be accommodated by greater residential. And I think we sort of, I'm not sure where it went to, but it kind of just disappeared.
I think transportation was
Transportation.
the buses. How many places could the buses visit?
That's right. So it's a factor of taking it in more dense areas, having some kind of commercial activity, and I don't know that one. It kind of disappeared.
Aaron?
All the way to the left.
I would judge the plan as being relatively conservative in terms of preserving what is, and there's been added environmental emphasis. But you mentioned the word Upper Gibsons. I think if we're talking about commercial development along the highway, that's certainly not the kind of thing we want. Think about Lower Gibsons, and there you have something that does have a village character, and I think the plan could be a little more adventurous in that direction, at looking at, for example, if you're looking at expanding commercial, why should it not have a couple of floors of apartments above? Why couldn't you cluster some townhousing around? These sort of things would help you to generate more frequent bus service too. So.
I think those are already provided for in the plan, but as we talked about this morning, and I think David mentioned his introductory remarks, we require a sewage treatment plan. We don't need to bring in sewer system, but in order to make significant changes to our density and to our commercial, we will be required by Vancouver Coastal Health to address the sewage treatment issue. It is a very constraining thing, as is the provision of water above the highway to our activities. So we have to be mindful of that, and we're all on individual septics. There are a few package plants around, but we'll have to come up with a wastewater plan in order to make any significant changes.
We do have
and that is in the plan that we do that.
We do have some examples of working systems.
Some examples. Judith,
Thank you. I just wanted to address the comment about, again, the highway looking like a strip mall. Because I think that is one of those things I was feeling when I read the plans, is a lack of creativity. And it's very old-fashioned thinking, I think, to say things like that. Because you can control exactly what you want development to look like by very tight design guidelines and by, of course, your zoning. And so if, for example, as Eric was just mentioning, you want to develop something up on the highway which is very attractive, which is an inn, I think I heard you say, which has some commercial development around it, there's no reason in the world why it can't be beautiful, why the parking can't be easy, and why it can't be fairly dense. And so I think that even though those things might be addressed in here, I think it's a little bit hard to find room. And then the question that I have is really, what is the next step here? And if people make comments and send information to David, then what happens?
Okay. What we'll do, or what I'll do is I'll have to take all the comments and distill them into one document. what I want to do is then reconstitute the working group to get some ideas discussed amongst ourselves to see if there's changes that need to be made or if there's more consultation that needs to take place. So if there's a theme that is felt that it's not been addressed in the community plan, we could go back out and ask for some specific discussions around those. And once we're comfortable that we've considered the changes, considered the comments, made changes to address them, or explain why we're not making changes, that's the other side of it, we'll then take a report forward to the Planning and Development Committee of the Regional District to seek amendment to the plan and to seek approval to hold a public hearing. And that would be advertised and we'll have a formal public hearing at that point.
And the time frame on that, David?
Well, I'm hoping till 4 to 6 weeks for the consultation period. A lot of that will be just defined by how many comments we get, how much work it generates. And then go to the planning committee, so maybe late May or June to seek the public hearing. And I've said I don't think we want a public hearing in July or maybe July, but definitely not in August, it'll be early July. And then we'd have to come back for approval, third reading in September-ish. That's if everything goes to plan, but it never does go to plan. It's a bad thing for a planner to say, I'm afraid.
Good.
Hi, I'm Rick O'Neill, live on Hanbury Road in Roberts Creek. I think the most important thing is to maintain the rural quality and quality of life in Roberts Creek. This is the 21st century. It's no longer the 1950s. It's time to stop catering to the automobile and catering to every developer who wants to cover everything with concrete. It's time to maintain some real values and not cater to the automobile. There probably needs to be improvements on existing highway. I'm no expert on highways, but we should not cater to the automobile and cater to the developers, and we should not consider putting a new highway in, as some people would like to do, which would destroy more of our potential agricultural land and destroy what little remains of our good forest land to the north of Roberts Creek and on Mount Elphinstone. Thank you.
Here, here.
Just to address that point, I think everybody's heard about the bypass. And there was a lot of discussion both at this committee and at when we were doing an integrated transportation study, which was completed last year, about whether or not there should be a bypass or another highway. And so it's in this plan, and it is in the integrated transportation plan, that there's support for the bypass around Gibson's at one end of Roberts Creek, and a bypass around as much as they can with the creek around and the inlet around Seashell at the other end of Roberts Creek, but that the putting in one at all or a route through Roberts Creek has not yet received sufficient community consultation. So if the two ends would be connected, if there ever were the amount of money required to do that from the province, that there would have to be a very vigorous and meaningful community consultation process, because a route along the power line, for example, I've counted 52 properties that would people would have to sell to the province and move and trash their hopes and dreams that they've built that live along there, or go up higher and deal with the forests on Mount Elphinstone. So it's complicated and difficult in this part of the Sunshine Coast to have another highway, should it even be desired. So it's basically not supported in the plan, and it's left as, if it's going to happen, you need to come back to the community and talk about it some more. That's what the committee felt strongly about.
Thanks so much. My name is Martin Prestage from Upper Creek, about 50 metres downhill here. I totally endorse what you just said, because I think the saying is more roads equals more cars, and that's something that I don't want to see here. Something I do see in this plan, in a number of locations, I only briefly browsed it now, is that some of the development is only permitted with the right amount of parking spaces. And I think that's something we need to be a little bit more creative about, putting in denser development in the core or along the new core, and a requirement on the number of parking spaces shouldn't necessarily be linked together, because for the same reason, more cars means more, or more parking means more cars. And I think that's something like the co-housing development has done in restricting the way people park there, and the way co-housing developments do in Vancouver, by reducing the amount of parking spaces is actually a good thing. I think we missed a great opportunity with the post office, and I know that's a different requirement, but I think we missed a great opportunity for a village square, rather than 8 very difficult parking spaces right in the centre of Roberts Creek. It would be perfect to have that as a village square for pedestrians and other users. So I'd like to see the designate or the requirement for parking spaces taken out of here and thought about in a more creative way.
Anybody else? Okay, there's lots of places to write stuff, and take David's card at the